All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next session, and it's honestly one that I'm really excited about because of the role new media has really played in how we evolve, how we reach folks. And so I want to start with this panel giving each person a moment to introduce themselves, talk about how they're engaged in new media, whether as an advisor or owning and leading their own outlets themselves. And so I'll kick it to Phil on my left to get started.
Okay, my mom raised me right, so we're gonna start with ladies first down here. I don't want you to be like, he don't know what he's doing. We'll start down there.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Bianca Cook. I am from the New Orleans, Louisiana area, so I'm just visiting your wonderful city. I am the founder of the NOLA Collective. We are a media and public relations brand based out of New Orleans, we focus on events and experience. And also, I am the chief of staff for Groundz, which is another platform that focuses on news, culture, and music in the New Orleans and Louisiana area. So, thank you.
Yeah, clap it up. I see people clapping. Yeah, sure. My name is Brittany Geneva Cummings. I am the founder of Geneva Savvy Media, and we work with leaders and organizations that are working in the advocacy and social impact space to really grow their visibility. So through that work, I created something called the Visibility Engine, which is really a framework that we use to grow the profile and awareness of what our leaders and organizations are doing through all kinds of channels. So it's really about finding the story and then figuring out how to disseminate it across media, whether we're doing op-eds, whether we're doing interviews, whether we are finding stages like this for thought leadership, and so really putting all of those pieces together and making sure that when we do work with media, that we are not too focused on the big names and that we're making sure that niche and new media platforms are a part of the mix, because all of that really works together to grow visibility.
Okay, wait, round of applause too, I'm sorry. My name is Phil Lewis. Some of you may know me as a floating head on Twitter. I'm on there posting news stuff. I am a journalist. I am over at the Huffington Post. HuffPost. We haven't been the Huffington Post in a while. I've been at HuffPost for about 10 years. I am an editor there. I'm a breaking news editor, basically. I'm also the president of the Washington Association of Black Journalists, which Michael's a member. We're the DC chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary in the DC area this year. And we are an organization of over 450 journalists, media professionals, comms professionals. So really happy to be here. I'm very excited for this conversation.
And clap it up for Phil, too.
Yes.
And so as y'all can see, we have like a really dope powerhouse like here, because this is just an exciting topic to me. Because oftentimes when we're having conversations about how we're engaging with media as communications professionals or working alongside leaders trying to determine their presence and where they want to be at, we often try to disregard or like little sis, little bro, like new media. And it doesn't make a lot of sense when this is where most folks are consuming their news at. Because like more folks are checking their social feed or they're looking for new and dynamic engaging outlets rather than watching an episode of 60 Minutes. And so because of that, when it comes towards driving change forward and reaching folks, like understanding new media is going to be central for like raising executive presence in the folks that you're working with. And so also, I'm Michael. I am the executive director of Speechwriters of Color. Thank y'all for being here. And so my first question to this group, I actually want to direct it to Bianca, because you have an incredible role, like not only founding and running your own local new media outlet, but also being the chief of staff and organizing another local and regional outlet as well. And I want to talk to you about, during a time when local and regional media are being decimated by lack of funding and cuts, how y'all are stepping in to bridge that gap.
Thank you. That's a great question. I would say for the NOLA Collective and Groundz, we definitely pride ourselves on original content being really a driving force of keeping us relevant and up to date with just like our community. I would say the community piece is what is keeping us afloat. We focus on community first and that trust, and being consistent with them keeps that trust and keeps us going. I would say another thing that we definitely take pride in also is leveraging AI as well by helping AI to expand basically our platforms, right? So for example, under Groundz, we have multiple IPs. We have Back of Town Comics, we have Ground Zero, which is our political initiative. We also have Louisiana Crime Files. We have different IP platforms underneath this larger umbrella, right? So we are not just reaching our normal audience all the time. We're also diving deep into other things that may be more niche. So I would say those are ways that we're staying relevant and staying consistent in front of the trends.
And Brittany, I want to make sure I'm saying this right, the visibility engine, right? Mm-hmm. And so I want you to talk about the role of engaging local and regional media with the visibility engine and why that can be especially meaningful for leaders on a national scale and a local scale engaging with local communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the ways that, local and regional media really plays a part of the engine is just making sure everything is like a cumulative effect. It builds. So if something is happening locally that we can really make relevant for the local media, that can start a groundswell that then creates a ladder effect to making a bigger story. And it allows us to be able to really customize the outreach, because the thing too about this work and like reaching these different types of media is making sure that the outreach that we're doing is really specific and appropriate for who we're reaching out to. So a lot of times there are stories that don't necessarily make sense for a national publication, but would be perfect for a local or regional publication. And that is a part of the bigger picture of how we're building the visibility and building the presence. And so we definitely, see a lot of value in being able to engage with local media and sometimes be able to get a more in-depth and more meaningful story that way.
And I want to bring all this together. Phil, you have your newsletter, What I'm Reading, where you aggregate a ton of content, both from local, regional, and national media. And one of the things that's always most impressive is just the diversity of content you provide. And so I want you to talk about part of the process of what you're choosing to amplify and how you're building that media digest of what you're reading every week.
Thanks for that. Yeah, so I have a newsletter like every other journalist. It's called What I'm Reading, whatimreading.net. And I created it in January 2023. This was around the time that Elon decided to buy Twitter, now known as X. And so when he did that, people reached out to me and said, okay, we get all of our news from you, so where are you going to be if, let's say, he just decides to just shut down Twitter? And I was like, that's a great point, because I don't own Twitter, right? I don't own Twitter. I'm just on it. I'm a person on it. So I decided, okay, maybe I should make a newsletter, even though I don't own Substack, but I own the domain. I own the emails that I have if I want to switch to somewhere else. So that's something I can do. So I created that because I really wanted people to find, as we talked about, I think in the last panel as well, algorithms have just destroyed how people are able to find news, especially local and regional news. And so I wanted to sort of fill that gap by creating this newsletter. And I find stories from all over the place, all sorts of different sources, just throughout my job anyway. I'm already seeing this anyway. So I've decided to just put these stories that are geared towards Black Americans and our stories, because we are, unfortunately, one of the most disproportionately targeted groups for misinformation and disinformation. And so I decided to put this in a newsletter, so it's coming from me, it's at least fact-checked in some way. And that's why I decided to create that newsletter. And so I just sort of see stories from sources that I know and that I respect and that I recognize, and that I just put them all in one form, so you don't have to scroll through all the hate that you see on Twitter. That's my job. I scroll through all the hate, And then I put it in the newsletter, so it's just you don't even have to go on social media. You can find it there.
And I think it's important also to recognize how we have a full ecosystem that's forming too. Like you have the owner and founder of an outlet. You have the person working with thought leaders and credible experts and making sure that they're being represented in that outlet. And then you have an aggregator who is pulling from all of these sources while also still owning their own outlet to make sure that there is a chain of information that folks are able to get. And when we have all of those different pieces of information, I think it really leads to the importance of why we have to not only be in community with one another, but we have to understand the different roles in which each of us are able to take in these moments. And so, Phil, for this next question, I'm going to go back to you, wearing your hat as president of the Washington Association of Black Journalists. What are you hearing from your membership and how they're utilizing new media, whether if it's creating their own outlets, or what are some ways in which you're starting to see folks continue to expand their visibility within the space?
Yeah, that's a good question. We just held, we were at NBC4 this past weekend, and we held a panel with leading AI sort of experts about just what is AI, like how do we use it? And so what we're trying to figure out is, at least for our membership, how do we stay ahead? Because journalism is one of those fields that I think people say are most at risk for us to lose our jobs or whatever. I think, in my personal opinion, is that journalists we need that creativity that a machine will never be able to make, but AI is a tool that can help us be more productive in a lot of different ways. So it's important to keep up with what's going on and know what's happening with it. Like using, Google Notebook and all these different things. It can increase your productivity. So for somebody like myself who is sifting through all this information, AI tool can be very useful for somebody like myself. So right now, what we're trying to figure out is, what are the tools that we should be using? What are the best ways that we can use AI? These are the conversations that we're having right now with the WBJ.
And Brittany, I want to also get your take on this a little bit too, where I know I've seen with some of the client work that I do with my business outside of Speechwriters of Color, like there are more and more like AI news outlets that will like capture information or cite or source clients that come up in media alerts and all, but aren't particularly real. And so,
they're not real.
Yeah. And so when you're working with leaders and experts, can you talk a little bit about how you're navigating that and how that might not be like valid or real visibility and making sure to avoid those potential landmines?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most important ways to navigate that is just kind of like old school, like media 101, which is like vetting and making sure that when I'm putting together the lists and the platforms that we will reach out to for these different stories, that they're really vetted and it's really something that we've looked into deeply and not just sort of like pulled it from Muckrack or Cision for people who are in PR, or just saw something on Google News, like really going in to try to understand, okay, what does this person write about? Who are they? How can I reach them? And usually by doing that, it's very easy to figure out, oh, this is actually not a person at all. And also, like, again, all of it is like not fighting, but like countering some of this AI, challenges with just old school tactics. Like, I still meet journalists in person. I go to NABJ every year except this year.
Was it in Cleveland? It was in Cleveland. That's why you go.
I'm not gonna say that on the live stream, but I just didn't make it. And so, but I typically go to NABJ every year, and I really meet journalists and talk to journalists in person, so that and sometimes pitch stories to them in person, or at least start conversations, when we're actually like relationship building. And so I think like the relationship building piece is the other part of like, that's how we're actually going to create, make sure that the visibility we're getting is real, because this isn't just like a name I saw online. This is a person who I've met and talked to. And even if it is like a smaller or more niche outlet, like I had an executive director recently be featured in a Substack that was just started. It was the first article of that Substack, but I met that editor who was working for another outlet, and she was starting the Substack, and she was like, I would love to interview him for this. And so we were like, yeah, sure, so sure, that's not going to be the biggest audience, but that's just a part of like the overall picture of how we're like building out his visibility, and that was created through just like relationships.
And Bianca, I want you to wrap this like conversation up in terms of how are you protecting your like intellectual property from these potential like fake aggregators who might take content from the NOLA Collective or Neutral Groundz. Are there any safeguards or tips y'all can offer folks potentially taking y'all's content?
That's really hard, especially because you're putting it on platforms that you don't own. So it's like, I think even like, there's been so many conversations like on X and Substack posts about like, the terms and conditions that we keep getting updated all the time. So it is really hard to honestly do that. We're still trying to figure out how we do that. Honestly, really for us, because it's such original content, most time, even if you take it and put it somewhere else, kind of just how they were talking about in the previous panel about clip farming, that's a whole new thing that actually is helping people who have those long form podcasts or helping content extend beyond just somebody's platform. So I would say we're still exploring that, but we don't necessarily, we're not as worried because sometimes honestly it helps. So if my video is taken to some of these other theme pages and I do put a little tag at the bottom like this is like the NOLA Collective, and or people put there's some creators that put their logo and the kind of like kind of watermark it. It does most of the time still help bring funnel like to your platform. I would say in the sense of just like AI and just how we use it, because I said we use it a lot. So that's another reason probably why we aren't as worried. We use it in like two ways of efficiency, like helping make our business more efficient, especially like Michael, you got a chance to work with us in person for Essence Fest, but we're still a small team. So it's like for the NOLA Collective and Newtral, efficiency and ways of using different tools like MiniChat, Opus Clip, Make.com, and then also on the content piece, like we have whole documentaries that are made through AI. We have whole, like Back of Town Comics is a whole AI strip, but also it's revenue generating because people are able to put ads or we're able to market businesses or talk about important topics like through, maybe, political cartoon style. So we embrace it more than being scared of it. And then I would say we're okay with probably original content being put out on other platforms because we know like clip farming and all that it's a thing now. And I think we have to be okay with it and have to learn how to still, as you're working, I would say with the brands, with brand deals or hotel, I was talking about hotel collabs earlier, understanding when you're doing that contracting piece though, that's a little different. We could talk about that. That's a whole nother conversation where you do have to put in that language to protect your content that's original and for that client.
And I think that piece is very interesting. So I was reading something this morning, actually, where someone's landlord had tried to put in the lease that they would own any intellectual property created at the address that they were renting from.
Oh, no.
And their rationale of it, the landlord's rationale was, well, a lot of people are streaming nowadays, and you wouldn't be able to stream this content if you weren't at, like, the place that you're renting from me. So I'm demanding full ownership. It's a normal clause. And the person was like, I don't think that's a normal clause.
Thank you for that more fuel to hate landlords. I'm sorry, landlords.
Right?
I'm sorry.
Right?
Something to be aware of, definitely.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where there's a lot of folks like that will always look to pull the okie doke along with just folks who are generally bad faith actors navigating in this moment too. And so I think it's particularly interesting to figure out what we're able to do when it comes towards not only protecting like what we're creating and like what we own, but also making sure that we're able to add those protective measures and barriers for our consumers too, and the folks that we're building community with and actively providing information to. I will say I want to turn this conversation to what I think is an interesting piece that each of us hold on this stage, is that we're all storytellers in some way, shape, or form, while we're also all leaders as well, and like building our own executive presence and how we're showing up too. And so sometimes we might want to focus on the stories rather than like being on the stage or spotlight ourselves. And so given your knowledge and like your background and like amplifying the stories of others, what's something that you're working on doing to help expand your own executive presence in this moment? And anyone can take that first.
So I actually am working on the last panel, the advice they said was like, just start. And I'm very bad at that. I'm very like, I'll just plan and plan and plan. But I'm really planning on starting my podcast this year. I had one, but it wasn't something that was going to aid my business, but now I am looking to launch a podcast that is related to sort of helping people who want to become freelancers or want to start their own consultancies and be able to navigate that. So that's something I'm doing. And then I had a YouTube channel that I also want to restart. So I'm kind of trying to bring some things back to life.
Okay, I would say kind of similar. I do have a podcast with my best friends called Standing on Business Podcast. So we get a chance to talk about everything from our corporate lives to the creative entrepreneurial life now. And so we're able to drop gems and kind of interview some very important people. So please check it out. So that's a way I'm able to, I guess, expand my executive presence. And then also also, similar to you, I'm trying to get more into building my personal brand. So I'll probably be starting my own personal Substack. I love Substack also. We have one for the NOLA Collective and for Newtral for different purposes, but still the same. And I love that you can we can recommend each other. So we're able to help expand audience on both sides. So I would say my Substack and then as well as just continuing the podcast.
And I'll add one thing, because this came up on the last panel. One thing I've been starting to do too is to be active in more Reddits that are related to consulting, freelancing, entrepreneurship, and just like answering people's questions and providing like advice in there. That's something I've recently started doing too.
Let's see. Raise your hand. Anybody in here know I Show Speed? Anybody ever heard of this guy? Okay, so I'm new to learning about him. And now I'm just like really fascinated by this kid. Like he's like really impressive in a lot of different ways. And recently he was in DC. He was here in DC. He went to the Capitol with Congressman Maxwell Frost. And I asked Congressman Frost about this experience. I was just like, what did that do for you? And he told me that, you know, obviously they gave him a tour, gave this kid a tour of the Capitol. If anybody's not familiar with him, he's like, I don't even know how to describe him. He's like a young, hyperactive, he's like your young, hyperactive cousin or something. He's a streamer, right? And he does like a lot of really interesting stuff. And people kids watch him for like hours. Like they sit there and watch him, like his streams for like 8 hours. There's nothing I can watch for 8 hours just straight in a row. But anyway, so I asked him, like, what did you get out of having him there? And he's like, we didn't force it. We had these young people. We drove like thousands of voter registrations or something. Like we didn't like push it, but we had Speed basically kind of introduce this really broad group of people who normally couldn't care less about what's happening on Capitol Hill. But they decided to register to vote just because of what Congressman Frost was talking about on the stream. The stream is available on YouTube. And so that got me like thinking, what if I started streaming? But I can't do it for 8 hours. So I'm looking, I'm trying to experiment with it. I'm thinking about it. I just don't know. I can't do flips or what all the stuff that he does. But I'm thinking about it because it might be an interesting way to reach, because I'm always thinking about what are the best ways to reach new audiences, right? And so I don't know if I'm there yet with the streaming, but I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to get there.
See, no, I love that. I think it's especially fascinating too of like meeting audiences where they're at. Like for me, this year has been writing in my own voice and own name a bit more rather than being a ghostwriter, speechwriter, And our partner sponsor, Contrarian News, is where I'm a contributor at now, where I publish a couple times a month, and I tend to write at the intersection of politics, policy, and culture. And oftentimes I will just see it's something I'm consuming, whether if it's like the NFL draft, for example, is something that I was consuming. And I'm like, why are we not doing anything around like moving or motivating people? It was in Wisconsin this year. Like it's the perfect place to like tell folks, hey, Why can't you watch your favorite team on like one streaming service or one platform? Why are you only dealing with like needing Peacock, needing YouTube TV, needing Prime Video, needing Fox CBS access or some sort of like live TV? Like that would be a perfect way to move and organize people over their favorite teams or like something they're consuming, and not in an in-your-face way of, hey, have you heard about these monopolies? But rather, don't you want to watch your teams and like enjoy that? And so for me, like I consume a lot of movies and TVs, like from very serious things to also like love my Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, you know? And by being able to engage with that, but then drawing toward my expertise, I found it's become a new way for me to show up in different ways and to be able to provide some advice in terms of this is how we're able to show up in this way, shape, or form. And I think it's interesting because oftentimes when we're like thinking about history and reflecting on history, we're reading like the perspectives and insights of storytellers, you know. Yet we have this kind of idea that we're supposed to be behind the scenes. We're not supposed to be driving and like leading these conversations. Yet the folks that we're emulating and the folks that inspire us are the ones who were setting the record straight, you know. And so I think it's really important that we often think of how are we willing to set the record straight, especially in our roles working with leaders as speechwriters, not only for other folks we're working with, but in terms of what we're able to drive and navigate ourselves. And so I have only a couple more things before we wrap up. But first, I want to just hear from y'all. What's something that y'all are just looking forward to witnessing the continued evolution of, and how are you looking to participate in it?
I will say Substack. I think, let's see. So Substack, I've been on it for a while, and I've seen it change. Like I said, I've been on it since 2023. I've been using it pretty actively. I publish a newsletter every Friday since 2023. Every Friday it comes out, and I've noticed how it's changed. So back then, it was essentially just a platform for people to write. Now it's kind of a social media platform. If people are old enough and here to remember, you remember when Facebook was kind of just like for your friends, and you know you could post your status. Now you can like post videos and notes and all this, you know, there's groups and there's all this stuff. And so Substack is going through a similar sort of change because it wants to be sort of a competitor to Twitter or X or whatever. So it's evolving in a lot of different ways that I'm curious to see. And the people who are on Substack and support, and the people who support people on Substack really do care about the written word, which is why I love being on there. They are true nerds. Which I love. So I'm curious to see how it grows. Former Vice President Kamala Harris just started her Substack like a couple days ago, I think. So it's growing. It's getting there. I would encourage you, like if you like to write, what I love most about Substack is that you don't have to wait for some middleman to approve your pitch. You can write. You can just write, and I think that's why people like it a lot.
I would say I agree with Substack because like I said, utilize it every Thursday. That's when we drop. But I would say I'm curious and excited to see what is the next platform that emerges. So I feel like, you know, it's like we've had these traditional platforms for so long as far as like Facebook, Instagram. Obviously now Substack is new, but what is next? That's always like in my back of my mind. Like what is next and how can we prepare for it? As somebody who, you know, we put out on everything, YouTube, X, TikTok, Instagram. So it's like, what is next or what could be next and how can we prepare for it? I'm more excited about it.
Can I say one thing about that just real quick? I was on a call with Nielsen, and we were talking about some of the most important platforms for like what's happening next. Mm-hmm. And there was one that was surprising, and then there was one that wasn't as surprising. One that was surprising was they were really talking about radio. They were like, radio is like massive for Black communities. It's just the cultural impact of radio is just, you know, obviously we know about this. This is why the Breakfast Club is still on it's still going. But radio, that's the one that was a little surprising to me. I was like, oh, because I don't think I listen to radio. Maybe I do. And then the other one that we talked about the most was actually YouTube. They were saying YouTube Shorts. Like if you are thinking about getting into TikTok type of content, YouTube Shorts is a competitor that right now you're kind of on the ground floor. Like they like get on it right now. Like get on it now. Just start talking. Start doing it. Like don't wait. Just start doing it because they are looking for, I guess, the next big influencer or whatever. But we were talking about YouTube and we were talking about radio.
Yeah, no, I agree. And with YouTube Shorts, we just started using it a lot, at least for the NOLA Collective side. I don't do as much long form content, so I've been utilizing YouTube Shorts and not even having long form content on YouTube, so that is something you could do. So even if you have personal short form videos, say as like your personal brand you're building, put it, just like you said, on YouTube Shorts. But additionally, if you do have long form, such as like a podcast or say a documentary or just any type of long form video, and you cut it up utilizing like Opus Clip or some other platform, you could link that long form video to your shorts as well. So that's another way to just help you keep that cycle going. And I would say that's something we always think about when it comes to like our media platforms with the NOLA Collective and Groundz, is like looking at our whole ecosystem, how it feeds into each other. So as I post, for example, for the NOLA Collective, I post every Friday of what's happening in New Orleans. You could really just I'd put like, if you want the full list, comment lists. And so people comment lists. We use ManyChat with the AI tool to send them a direct link to the Substack for them to sign up. So from the Substack, I now own, as we were talking about, you own that audience, right? So in a way of like having their email, if something happens, I have all those emails. I can go and move them somewhere else if I wanted to. So I utilize and try to make sure we're always thinking ahead about how all these things work together in our ecosystem. Yeah. Hopefully I answered that.
Brittany? I will say, for me, something I am really looking forward to is the continued evolution, particularly of Reddit and Twitch, just because I think there's a lot of very, very fun opportunities to like engage there, ranging from things like Ask Me Anythings, with like different leaders participating and partaking more on Reddit, along with on Twitch. I think there's more streaming opportunities and engaging in video games, particularly as new launches come out, and just being able to like game with folks. Like for me, like I'm a big sports gamer, so your Madden, your NCAA college football, like making its return, like there's opportunity there just to be a thought leader, but again, not throwing things in people's faces. It's more like, yeah, I'm gonna whoop your ass at this game, but like, hey, let's actually like talk a little bit about something too. And so my final question for y'all is, what's one thing y'all want to plug, and also what's one thing you're doing for self-care?
Before I say that, I want people to go read that Nielsen report. It's called Engaging Black Audiences. If you just like Google it, Engaging Black Audiences Nielsen, it'll pop up and it'll talk about the radio aspect, which I thought was just really interesting. One thing I want to plug, like I said, the WABJ is celebrating its 50th anniversary. So we're having a 50th anniversary gala on November 8th at the Embassy of France. November 8th. If you want tickets, go to wabjdc.org. We'd love to see you there. And one thing I do for self-care, I do Pilates. I do Pilates every week. I love Pilates.
Awesome. Well, one thing I want to plug is that in addition to heading up Geneva Savvy Media, I also co-founded an event brand called The Nod, like the nod that you give somebody, when you see them across the way. And we do events and game nights that are really designed to be super interactive and bring people together and really help build community. So our next one is Friday, October 3rd. So if you just find The Nod, it's at The Nod Presents on Instagram. You can get all the information about that. But I just see that as an extension of building community and helping people come together, especially when a lot of people in DC feel like sometimes it's hard to make authentic connections and everything feels a little bit transactional. So part of what we want to do with this is to sort of counter that. And in terms of self-care, I think that's kind of part of it, really just spending time with my friends and spending time with people who I know, really care about me and I really care about them, and just making sure that I always make time for that and not let work or things keep me too busy. That's very important for my self-care.
I would say for a plug, I'm in New Orleans area, often a city sometimes overlooked when it comes to media or, innovation. So I would say if you're looking to connect with the New Orleans community, if you know any businesses looking to connect, sponsorship, brands, please connect with me after this. We are growing so much and we're literally creating so many different avenues and so many different opportunities for people. Would love to make sure that I'm getting that out there, beyond our city. Additionally, under Newtral Groundz Music, we do have an artist, Mike Cole. If you don't know anything about Jazz Bounce, I would definitely say to look that up. We had our first show on Friday. We sold out tickets in like 30 hours. It is going to be a global genre, so wanted to tell y'all about it and just plug that. I would say for self-care, recently I just been very consistent with my habits of working out. I would say that is a part of my self-care, just making sure I'm showing up for myself.
Love that. I'd say for me, for self-care, I love sports. So like football season being back has been my refuge. Getting to just be inside on Sundays, make some DraftKings and like fantasy football teams.
Watching the Lions win. Watching the Lions
Oh,
win last
absolutely.
night.
Absolutely.
Detroit. Yes.
Always, listen. There's always some Detroiters in the house. The 313 rolls deep. And the thing to plug, I would say, is continue to stay engaged with Speechwriters of Color. Of course, make sure, if you're not already, pull your phone out, follow us on Instagram at Speechwriters of Color, and also follow us on LinkedIn at Speechwriters of Color, just to stay in touch with what we're doing. Because outside of the conference that we pull together every year, we often find space for smaller curated dinners. We also tend to partner on reports and thought leadership as well to make sure that we're driving folks forward in the work and providing that expertise and opportunity, especially for communications leaders in the work. And can we give a round of applause for this group of panelists?